Hey everybody, welcome to week 3. This week, our main focus is going to be understanding and counting calories and kind of a basic understanding of macronutrients. Now, calories are one of the most basic and important kind of portions of losing weight and pretty much all diets. So whether you're looking at a diet like keto, carnivore, paleo, intermittent fasting, Whole30, all of them, the reason that they're successful and the reason people lose weight, it all comes down to calories in, calories out. It's basically the most fundamental law, and it's part of the first law of thermodynamics. And an interesting fact, in science, the whole calories in, calories out has never once been proven wrong. So in today's day, there's a lot of people in the exercise science and nutrition business that are trying to push that calories in, calories out aren't necessarily the answer. There's never been a single study saying that that's true. It all comes down to it. Now, you may have been through a diet where you're counting calories, or maybe known someone and felt like that calorie in, calorie out didn't really work for you. There's 3 main reasons why that may have been. Number 1, the most likely is not just very accurate counting of calories coming in. A lot of the times people might input something, say they have a calorie counting app, and they're kind of estimating. If you misestimate things, there could be a huge difference in what you're actually putting in. So it's very important you calculate it correctly. Number 2, as the calories drop, your activity will also drop. So if you're not, calculating or kind of compensating for lack of activity, then even if you drop the calories going in, if the calories going out also drop, that maintenance or that point where you're gonna lose weight is also gonna drop. So you need to make sure that you're calculating how much activity you have, so when you drop the calories, it's actually below the activity. Number 3 is like a metabolic issue, whether it's a bad thyroid or some kind of internal hormone thing. Now that's obviously something that you're gonna wanna see a doctor about. And in that situation, it's not like calories in, calories out aren't working, it's just that your calorie intake needs are different because of your thyroid. Now, to kind of jump into the basics of calories and how we can avoid those issues up above, it's important to kind of understand what a calorie is. And essentially, a calorie is just energy that your body uses. So when you intake food, there's a certain amount of calories in there, and your body is going to use up a certain percentage of that so that it can function, whether it's going to the muscles, so you can move, to the organs, digestive system, everything is working off calories. Now, we kind of break up these calories into 4 kind of categories. There's protein, fat, carbohydrates, and alcohol. Now, we're not gonna talk too much about the alcohol. If you're a drinker, that's something you enjoy doing on the weekends, we can talk about that separately and how to calculate those. I'm mostly just gonna focus on the 3, protein, fats, and carbs. And these are kind of broken down into what's called macros or macronutrients. Each macronutrient has a different function in the body. Each is extremely important and you need it in your body. Now, obviously you may be thinking, well, what about like keto, carnivore, some of those diets that completely take carbs out of the equation? That's a totally separate kind of principle where the body will actually change how it's utilizing the macros you put in its body, because it does need carbs. If you take carbs out, there is a function in the body where it can start using fat as that source. The problem is it's really hard to maintain, and I don't really suggest it unless you're trying to lose a huge amount of weight in a short period of time. But then even then, you want to transition more into just counting macros, because if you don't have carbs, there's some disadvantages. So I just always think it's better, unless there's a specific reason, to just stick with focusing on all 3 and just having a healthy balance of them. Now, to break down each one of them is going to be a little bit different. So with protein, each gram of protein is going to have 4 calories. Carbohydrates are the same. Every gram of carbohydrates has 4 calories. Now, fat's a little bit different. For every gram of fat, there are going to be 9 calories associated, which we'll get a little bit deeper into each one of these in future weeks, because I want to do a deep dive on each individual macronutrient, why it's important, what it's doing, how it's helping you. And when we get to that, we're going to talk a little bit more about fat and how kind of there's these bad myths about it, right? You hear the word fat, you assume, oh, this is body fat. Not the same thing. The disadvantage of fat is it does have a higher calorie density, right? Like every gram is 9. And so we do want to make sure that we're careful with how much fat we're intaking, but fat is essential for the body. But we'll get into that a little bit later. But to be a little bit specific for today's video and this week, we really want to understand how a calorie counting plan works and how we can set up these calories. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at your BMR, which stands for your base metabolic rate. Essentially, your BMR is the calories that your body needs to maintain basic function, right? Your organs, digestive system, everything that's internal, you have to have a certain amount of this. And so first you're going to find out that, and then based off your activity, there's going to be different levels of maintenance. Say that your BMR is 2,000, right? You don't want to ever get too close to 2,000. And let's say your maintenance for how much you exercise, activity levels like that, let's say it's 2,800. So that's what you need to maintain your body weight. So kind of depending on your goals, you want to lose weight, well, we need to get below that 2,800. You want to gain weight, let's say you're trying to bulk up for a weightlifting competition, you want to put some more size on, then you're going to want to be above that. Now for today, I don't want you to have to worry about like where you're gonna set your BMR or your this and this. I'm gonna take care of that for you. I just want you to have a base understanding of this so that as we move forward and as we get to the end of the program, you understand how to create your own diet so that in the future, you don't need a nutritionist, you don't need anybody. Today, we're mostly gonna focus on practicing how to input calories and kind of calculate where those are. To briefly explain how I'm setting up most of these diets. It's gonna be a little bit different for everybody, but in general, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through the BMR, all that. I'm then gonna start with protein. For your protein intake, you wanna have about 0.75 grams of protein per every pound of healthy body weight. So as an example, let's say maybe you're 250, 260, but your healthy body weight is 185. So that's what we're gonna go based off of. 0.75 grams of 185 is about 140, give or take a couple of grams. So I would be setting up your protein intake for each day to be about 140 grams. For the fats, usually you're gonna go between 70, 75, 90-ish grams per day, and you're gonna kind of adjust that based on how you feel, right? Some people enjoy higher fat, some people enjoy lower fat. It just depends on how you go. You wanna have at least 50 to 60 grams of carbs just so that your joints and things like that don't start hurting. But we're gonna kind of base it off that. Now, whatever's left in the calories that we've established, right? Whether we're cutting or bulking, you're just gonna fill the rest of that up with carbs. Now, this is like to get started. Then we're gonna kind of look at your weight, look how you're adjusting, feeling, and then we can make adjustments as we go. So just to kind of give you a brief example, let's say we have a client, who wants to lose a significant amount of weight. Let's say they're around 300 pounds. And we're just setting their healthy body weight around 200 pounds. Now, their BMR is set at about 2,050, and so the body needs a minimum of 2,050 just to function. Now, their maintenance is about 2,900. That's what their maintenance is based on their, how much they're moving, things like that. So we're gonna set their base calories to start at about 2,500. It's a few hundred below, but it's definitely above the BMR. So we don't, like I said, we don't want to get too close to that. So how that's going to look, about 150 grams of protein per day, 90 grams of fat, and about 270 grams of carbs per day. Now, to do a little bit of a step back, I've mentioned that we don't want to get too close to the BMR. One of the reasons for that is you've probably heard the layman's term starvation mode, or where your body's going into this starvation function. Basically, if you get too close to that BMR, it's like you're just gonna starve automatically. The body is really good at adapting. But if you get too close to that where the body is struggling to be able to do all of its normal functions, it's just gonna start slowing the metabolism down and holding on to fat quicker. So when we set these diets up, we have to be careful not to get too low, because if we get too low, the body's actually gonna start slowing everything down and making it harder to lose weight. Now, for this next week, what we want to do is we want to start practicing these skills of counting calories and understanding macros. Now, again, like all parts of this program, we are going to not just jumping into the deep end right away. We're going to kind of gradually add skills, habits, and little bits of understanding. And so with the calories, there are going to be a few things that we're going to add this week. Number one, we are going to be adding in a second healthy meal. So this last 2 weeks, you've been having either a healthy breakfast or a healthy lunch. We're now going to be having both a healthy breakfast and a healthy lunch. Now, obviously, if you need to move things around, have one of those dinner and have, let's say you want to go out to eat with your significant other for lunch or breakfast, you can move things around. But right now, I want you to have 2 healthy meals, preferably lunch and breakfast, and that healthy snack. Number 2, I want you to download a calorie counting app. Now, there is going to be a ton of options out there. You may have used different ones. You may have tried different ones. If you have one you really like, you can just stick with that. The 3 that I recommend from the research I've done is either MyFitnessPal. That's the one I use the most. Unfortunately, there is like a paid version now, and it's kind of frustrating, but the free version still gets the job done. 2 is Fat Secret, and 3 is Chronometer. I haven't used those a ton, but from all the research and looking into it, I like the way they're set up, and they get the job done. I really like both those. So those would be my 3 suggestions. With the food apps, I want you practicing inputting all of the healthy meals. Now, this should be pretty easy because I'm giving you a meal plan, right? So you're pretty much just typing in what I'm giving you, the quantities, things like that. But if you add extra stuff in, I want you to add that too. So this next week, we're just practicing using the app, putting things in, understanding and how to look at those and see where the calories and macros are, so that starts kind of clicking. And as we get further in the program and you start to actually take over what you're eating for different meals, putting in, it's going to be really simple. Now, the last thing we're going to do this week is using a food scale. For some of you, you might already have them, you might already be using it, that's great. If you don't have a food scale, they're not that much. I think the one me and my wife use, we got for like $12 or $13 at Walmart, works just fine. And make sure it has ounces and grams. Those are the two main things we're gonna be weighing. So what I want you to do this next week is, as you're putting these things in, if you feel comfortable and you've used food scales before, weigh everything, carbs, fats, proteins. If you're not, and this is new to you, then I just want you weighing in proteins. So with meat sources, you know, chicken, turkey, beef, pork, things like that, we weigh them all in ounces. With other protein sources or other sources, usually grams, like egg whites, you weigh in grams, you know, whey protein, you're gonna weigh in grams. We'll kind of talk about that a little bit more on the phone, but those three things one more time. So we're going to be adding in an extra healthy meal. We're going to be downloading and practicing inputting into a calorie app. And then third, we're going to be using a food scale to kind of practice going through that a little bit. Now, again, we're going to go through this a little bit more in depth on the phone. If you have any questions as you're watching this video, hopefully you wrote them down and we can kind of go over them on the phone. I want to dive in a little bit deeper if you have questions. Other than that, look forward to a phone call and hope you're having a great day.